Back in 1990 whatever, the console wars were in full swing. Sega and Nintendo were competing with each other with the NES and the Sega Master System, but Sega wasn't doing a very good job and everyone thought they were kinda stinky. But soon, Sega would release the Sega Genicast, a 16-bit console that would put the NES's face in the dirt and rub it a little bit and spit on the back of their head until it cried. Shortly thereafter, Nintendo would release the Super Nintendo, and then they were more evenly matched, so Sega and Nintendo went at it, trading blows back and forth. Sonic versus Mario, Yoshi versus... Well, Sega didn't really have a Yoshi equivalent, because nobody likes Yoshi as a person. That was an easy win for Sega. But more importantly than the back and forth direct comparisons, Sega also had a few games of their own that didn't really compare to any Nintendo games. One of the most popular of which was an early console roguelite called Toejam Earl. In Toejam Earl, you play as two funkalicious funkatronic alien Renos crash landed on the Earth because the fat one is kinda stupid and probably borderline too dumb, and then you go around being cool and picking up pieces of your spaceship and putting it back together so you can get the heck out of this dump. Critics at the time were ranting and raving about how cool Toejam Earl was. Dave from the Sega magazine Megaplay said, "There's no doubt that Toejam Earl has some of the best graphics and sound you'll get on the Genesis. But there's a slight problem, the game. It's fun, but there's not as much depth as I would have liked." What Dave doesn't seem to realize is this is a roguelite with infinitely randomly generated world and item placement, so Dave is kind of a fucking idiot. So Toejam Earl is unanimously agreed upon to be really cool and have great music and cool boys, and everyone likes it and thinks it's neat. However, there's just one problem. Nobody at Sega remembers making it. We know the game was published by Sega, and we also know the game was developed by Johnson Vorsanger Productions, but if you actually talk to them, things get a little weird. Trying to find someone at Sega who recalls being involved with the publishing of this game is kind of impossible. You talk to them, you ask around, and nobody seems to know. But this is understandable. The game was released back in 1990 something, so the guys probably moved on, whoever did it. Stranger than this, though, is trying to get information out of the game's developer. I sat down and talked with the game's programmer, Johnson Vorsanger, and did a little interview about Toejam Earl. Initially, things went just about as well as you'd think it would. He was happy to discuss how the game is really cool, and Toejam is red, and Earl is really fat, and everything was going great. But then I tried to ask him more specific questions about the game's development. The answers I got were kind of sidesteppy and generic, and when I tried to get more direct answers, things got a little standoffish, and eventually he just kind of slowly scooted his chair closer and closer to the door until I tried to ask him about what color his computer was that he programmed Toejam Earl on, and at that point he just darted out of the room and I never saw him again. He left his wallet here. Johnson Vorsanger, if you want your wallet back, you can just come back and get it. Please don't make this weird. I realized no one was going to give me the information I was looking for, so I started to do some of my own research, starting with the game's cartridge. Right off the bat, I noticed something really weird. It doesn't actually have the title of the game on it. You just got the close-up of these two cool dudes, and one's eating a hot dog, and then Toejam is saying something really weird. Like, this isn't English. Maybe it's alienese? It's like there's a forward slash and then there's mean. What is that? It's not words. It's just not. So I looked at that, I sat there for a while, and eventually I opened up my web browser and I typed in exactly what Toejam was saying. \MMIN apostrophe exclamation mark. And at that point, I was shocked. I'm looking in my web browser, and it seems to be a stock entry for some weirdly named company. Index IQ, Active IQ, McKaymun, INSD. I've never heard of this company before, so I went ahead and started to look into them to try to figure out what they do. But for the life of me, I can't figure out anything about what they do. I just see extremely vague documents about income tax and municipal bonds, and this is some kind of shell company. After a few more hours of digging, I was eventually able to find one solid piece of information. An address associated with the company. It wasn't too far from me either, so I decided to take the risk and go ahead and head on over and figure out what the heck this place was. So I get to the building, and it seems to just be some unoccupied brick building inside of an older part of town. I head on in, it's pretty much just an abandoned office building. But then I look down the hall, and the door slowly opened, and there was a Sega Nomad just sitting there with Toejam and Earl in it. I played it on my way home, and I picked up some Taco Bell along the way. I had a great time, and overall I recommend doing it again. Big props to all my supporters on Patreon. Here's some of them right here. If you want to support me as well, you can click on that Patreon link. Or if you want a shirt with Peter on it, you can click on that Teespring link. You can follow me on Twitter, you stupid idiot, at RockHuck64. That's it. Thanks for watching. Mario.